Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the at Surrey Dietetics Let's Insta Live Chat series, Season 2. And my name is Long Lee, and I am a lecturer in dietetics at the University of Surrey, and tonight's host. And we've got a very special episode tonight because we are celebrating Black History Month with my three esteemed guests. And I can't really wait to hear their professional stories, quite inspiring, I am sure. And so I'm just going to give everybody a very brief introduction of my guest. So on my top right-hand corner is Claudine Matthews. So Claudine is a registered dietitian in the UK for over 20 years, with extensive knowledge and experience in behaviour change and personal leadership empowerment. She is a qualified lecturer and currently works as primary care network dietitian in London. The last 9 years, Claudine has dedicated her time to improving nutrition service provision for people living with sickle cell disease, writing articles, hosting and speaking at international sickle cell conferences, and currently completing her professional doctorate degree to integrate nutrition into standard care in sickle cell disease. Very, very impressive, Claudine, and I'm sure I'll hear more from you later on. And on my bottom left-hand corner is Esther Kumi. And Esther is a diabetes specialist dietitian and first contact practitioner based in Caversham Primary Care Network in Reading. He qualified in 2017 and specialised in diabetes in 2019 and has relied on his skills as an advanced practitioner in diabetes and service leader to support colleagues and innovate a successful primary care dietetic service. He is always eager to share findings and network to learn about and celebrate the successes of others. And welcome, Alistair. And that's very interesting as well because diabetes has always been one of my interests, and I'm sure I will learn more from you, not just from the chat, but from the future as well. Now, last but not least, my bottom right-hand corner is our very own Surrey graduate, Esther Longe. So Esther Longe is a recent graduate in nutrition and dietetics from the University of Surrey. Her passion for public health and nutrition has led her to start a social media page where she dismantles common myths about healthy foods and offers easy to understand health information to the public. Her public-focused dissertation, which explored the differences in weight loss intervention based on ethnicity and socioeconomic background, won the Nutrition Award at the University of Surrey in 2023. And that's usually awarded to the best dissertation that's in the clinical nutrition topic. So well done, Esther, and congratulations again. So welcome, three of you, and so nice to meet you guys. And obviously, I've met Esther in person. I was her personal tutor, actually.
Yes.
And obviously, then Claudine and Alistair, I've heard so much about you guys, but I'm sure one day I will meet you guys in person. And yes, so welcome, and I hope you will enjoy the next 55 minutes. And for people who are watching this, please feel free to type in comments if you want to engage with our guests, and I will see your comments, and obviously I'll read out. If you have any questions, you can type into that question box and we can chat and answer your questions, really. Okay, so let's make a start. And obviously, as I said, we are celebrating Black History Month tonight and in this episode. So what does Black History Month mean to you, and why do we need to celebrate it? If we can start with you, Claudine, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. It's a very important part, I guess, for us as people, but also as for the profession. And I think I'd like to start off by acknowledging the people that have gone ahead, the people on whose shoulders that we stand on, the people that have been really brave and courageous and bold to step and go into places that were really difficult and challenging, I can imagine. But we're willing to take a stand to say that we deserve more, we matter. And so for me, Black History Month is an opportunity where we can, you know, just embrace what has gone before, but lead on and take hold of the legacy, to stand up and to follow suit. And for me, as you've mentioned, leadership is really an important part of who I am and how I'd like to do things moving forward. And so calling all of us, you know, certainly those from the Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, but all of us to really embrace leadership and personal leadership empowerment so that we too can be brave, we too can be bold and take action, and stand up for what we believe in. Because my journey started where I was very quiet and I was silent and invisible for a very long time. And I guess learning from the leaders, the people that have gone ahead of us, you know, that you have to, at some point, you have to decide that you've got to be brave. You've got to be willing to step outside of the comfort zone. And so I think for me personally, Black History Month is that opportunity, that call on a national world level, that I challenge myself, but I'm also challenging those listening to think, where am I? What have I done? What is the legacy that I want to leave? But what is the action that I can take now to set that in motion? And so I'm grateful for the people that have gone ahead, but I'm also calling us, you know, the people now, the dietitians here and now, to take up that mantle, so to speak, and encourage and influence and inspire others to follow suit. So that's what it means to me, and that's why it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Challenge yourself and the leadership, and obviously we will talk about a bit more about of how, you know, you can motivate other people to join, and the next month we'll have a leadership a chat on leadership as well. But thank you so much, Claudine. Now moving to you, Alistair, what does it mean to you then?
It's actually quite interesting that that you've got Claudine, myself, and Esther here. So I think we represent, you know, the three different sort of facets, or I would say like walks of being a dietitian. So, you know, Claudine's been a service leader in our industry for years, you know, so she's actually, I know you were speaking about sort of legacy, Claudine, but, you know, you're actually part of that. And, you know, sort of, then you've got sort of myself, who's sort of following on, who's now trying to, you know, sort of build a road or pioneer a road. And actually, my role, I guess, as a dietitian from, you know, sort of from a Black background is actually building bridges. So, you know, with the pioneers that, you know, have gone and set the course before us, like, you know, my job and my peers, our job is basically to build bridges to make sure that that understanding is now reached, because, you know, Claudine and the team, these guys sort of, you know, they paved the way so that there would be a space for us to operate. There would be interest in us, and you know, our role is actually to, like I said, continue to build that awareness so people can know, you know, the nuances of our different cultures. So, you know, sort of being a Black man in dietetics, you know, I'm operating almost like a unicorn. Like first off, you know, that there aren't really that many Black and ethnic minority dietitians, you know, of the 20,000 of us, and then also there aren't that many males. So, you know, me being here because a place has been made for me means that, you know, I can, I can sort of shine as a beacon so other young Black men can actually take a look and say, do you know what, that could be a career path for me. It's not just a career for a certain group of people. And, you know, this guy's, you know, doing these kinds of things, you know, in this role, maybe it's something I could possibly do. And then also it's, you know, sort of working amongst sort of our other peers and actually making them more privy to the nuances of our culture. So, you know, Esther's done some pretty good work with, you know, sort of highlighting cultural differences in food and actually highlighting things, you know, some of the interesting things about our cultural diet, you know, in Africans, in Caribbeans, things like that. So, you know, our role is, like I said, it's just about, you know, building awareness and building bridges. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I feel like you have actually gave us some tasters of our following chats already, and the things we're going to discuss. That's excellent, and I think it's so good you said, you know, paving the way for people, but also continue to build. So people have, like Claudine has paved the way, but then we continue to pave that for people from a Black ethnicity, but beyond that as well, I guess, from every ethnicity and to thrive really in the dietetic profession and in every profession. Wonderful. Now, Esther, what's your view then? What do you think?
I agree with everything that's been said. And to be honest, you should have let me go first because they've said absolutely everything there is to say. But yeah, I think just highlighting that point, very important point about having diversity in dietetics. If you Google the word dietitian, you have to scroll for a very long time to see a Black person. You have to scroll for even further to see a man. So as you said, Alistair, it's actually very important that you cover that intersection of males and Black people. That is a very small proportion of dietitians, so that's very important. But again, diet being one of the most diverse things, one of the most heterogeneous things, that is part of different, even among different cultures. I mean, rather among the same culture, for example, as you mentioned, Afro-Caribbeans, our diets vary so largely. So there definitely needs to be representation, and I think having Black History Month and just shining a light on Afro-Caribbean diets, or what it means to be Black in dietetics, is definitely very, very important. And yeah, just as you said, Alistair, also getting people to understand a bit more about what the African or diet for a Black person can look like, and also as Claudine mentioned, just really championing being in the space of dietetics. That might not seem like it's a space that we belong in, but we definitely need to continue to pave a way for others to come as well. So definitely very, very important.
Absolutely, and some very, very, important points here, which we will explore a bit more in the next few chats. And so I guess I have briefly discussed your professional journey, and I was just wondering if you can tell us a bit more about your professional journey, really. And this time I'll go to you, Esther, first.
Yes. So professional journey, I've only just started working full time because I graduated in July. I guess I'll talk a bit more to what led me to dietetics. And actually, it was because I was really curious about what the numbers were on packaging. So like food labels. I was like, what does that mean? And I did a little Google search and found the SACN energy recommendations, so what I now know to be the dietary reference values, etc. And that just led me down the rabbit hole of learning about what a nutritionist is, and then what qualifications you need to actually have to be registered, etc. And then I somehow stumbled across dietetics, stumbled across Surrey, fell into there, flew through for 4 years, and here I am at the other side. So yeah, it was a very challenging journey studying dietetics. I expected it to be a lot easier than it is. But yeah, university is a whole separate ball game. But actually, I think coming out from university and having the expertise that I have, obviously nothing in comparison to my co-guests who are here, but having the knowledge that I have and being able to help my community is definitely what I wanted to come out of university with. So that's definitely, an achievement for me. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think, Esther, you obviously, most of your university life was actually COVID.
Yeah.
And so I think that was absolutely a challenge. And
it was
obviously, I can't remember when you started, but I think probably just around when COVID actually just started.
Yeah.
So you had the combination of the actual lockdown and having to study online, and then also going on to placement, and then coming back to uni for your final year. So I think I think that's actually becoming a life story really in the future, I'm sure. But I think well done, especially winning the award at the end and the certification. So that's just absolutely great. And so now moving to you, Alistair, and obviously you graduated in 2017. So I think I'm more interested in your sort of professional journey, since it sounds quite interesting, really, in diabetes, especially.
Yeah. So I want to try and keep it short because it's 6 years. We're going to try and squeeze it down. I first qualified 2017. My first posting was in University of not university. It was in Nottingham, Queen's Medical Center. So yeah, I was the only black man in the team. But you know, I wasn't deterred by it. Like I said, you know, my goal there was to build bridges ultimately. So I dipped and dived in quite a few teams. So Long, you might like this actually, because I did spend some time in head and neck. I worked with a phenomenal dietitian. Her name was Muriel Donaldson. She took a chance on me twice while I was working in Queen's Medical Center. And and that's when I was doing a bit more acute work. The goal for me was always to go into health promotion, always to go into diabetes eventually. But you know, you have to build a solid core, like a solid foundation. So for all you dietetic students out there, don't rush the journey. Spend your time, do your acute time, pick up the experience. It's so valuable. And obviously being where I was in Nottingham at the time, it gave me a chance to just see everything from renal to diabetes to acute nutrition support, all that sort of stuff. 2019, fast forward, got my first posting in the North East Essex Diabetes Service. So these guys basically trained me up to be the dietitian I am at the moment. So what they did was they supported me by putting me on an advanced management of diabetes module. And actually I was pulled away from dietetics for a little bit of time, for a good sort of three months or so. And I was just learning about sort of insulin initiation, insulin titration, medication management for diabetes, clinical examination procedures, the whole shebang. So they basically trained me up to take care of someone with diabetes from diagnosis right up to death. And you know, I had a really good time there in the North East Essex Diabetes Service. And then after that, I sort of moved to London because my wife, who's also a dietitian, but by the way, was she was studying a master's, so we moved to Reading. So I took a posting in London. So I was working with a consultant diabetes nurse called Chantal Naidu and a wonderful dietitian called Indira Nathan. And you know, it was sort of my first time sort of braving, you know, the big smog, as we call it, of London. And it was, you know, once again fantastic. I was at that point introduced to more of a diverse population. So I was previously working with a lot of people, you know, who were sort of Caucasian in origin, working with people who had type 1 diabetes. So you don't see a lot of diversity in type 1 diabetes like that. But then when I came to London, very diverse, huge melting pot of people. So one thing that I was able to help the team with at that point in time was develop a diabetes education program specifically for the Bengali population. So people who couldn't speak English as their first language, but needed diabetes education. Because, you know, not being able to speak the language meant that you couldn't go on to a Desmond program, you couldn't go on to the other structured education programs. So having a tailored education program that was available in your language, it was phenomenal for this group of people. So it just meant that we were able to reach out there. And then most recently, I work with primary care dietitians. After I sort of finished that role in London, I was seeking out opportunities to work in primary care. So so Claudine, I'm following in your footsteps. You know, I was looking for an opportunity to actually support primary care, because where I was in the North East Essex Diabetes Service, I was working a lot like a link practitioner between secondary care and supporting primary care with, you know, helping patients to achieve their treatment targets and things like that. But I always wanted to play for the other side and actually help from the inside out. So an opportunity came up. I linked up with primary care dietitians. Look out for them. They're also on Instagram if you're looking for primary care opportunities. And I've been based in a PCN in Reading, the Caversham PCN. It has been a very successful year, a very successful year with them. So I'm working as a first contact dietitian with them. And essentially, as a first contact dietitian, if someone comes in with an undifferentiated diagnosis, so they're tired, thirsty, going to the toilet a lot, they can book straight in with me. I can order their bloods, I can do clinical examination procedures, and actually, if the bloods come back that they have diabetes, I can diagnose them and then take the treatment from there. So once again, taking them from that journey from diagnosis right up until, you know, up until the end. So that's sort of like a brief.
Yeah. That's so interesting, especially, you can actually directly see the patients and diagnose them all to blood. I think that's really is interesting, the more advanced role, isn't it, in PCN. So I think that's so interesting, and I'd love to explore a bit more with you in the future, hopefully. Now, moving to Claudine, and I guess it must be really difficult for you to summarize it. Your experiences just in, I don't know, 1 or 2 minutes, and yeah.
Where do I
don't know
start?
where you should
With 1 or 2
start,
minutes.
actually. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what I will say is it was just lovely to listen to Esther's story and obviously Alistair's journey. And my journey has been very different. And so, as you've mentioned in my introduction, my area of interest is behavior change and personal leadership empowerment. And so my approach within my dietetic practice is very much about how do we prepare patients for the beautiful treatment plans that the lovely Esther and the lovely Alistair will have. So that's sort of where my area of interest is. But anyway, I started way back in South Africa, in Cape Town, as a dietitian. So very different to the UK, where you, like Esther was just finished in July, is now in a job, in a permanent position. I qualified, and I didn't have a job for a very long time. And so it was a very different sort of, state of affairs at that point. But eventually got a job in the community, working as a community-based dietitian. And again, I love people. I think with the dietetic profession, it's all about people, and that love for people and that love for how do you transform people from point A to point B has always sort of been there for me, although sometimes I didn't quite see the strengths of it. But that love for people and that, I guess, innate desire for transformation, for personal transformation, and getting people, as I said, from where they feel disempowered to a point of empowerment, has always sort of played throughout all the roles that I've had. So that was South Africa, moved to the UK in 2000, and then started dietetic career in the borough of Waltham Forest, and enjoyed that. Went to Hackney, where I loved working, a melting pot. So, just different races, ethnicities, and so for the colleagues I worked with were wonderful. So that was sort of formative in terms of clinical dietetic practice, which again I loved because I love people and I love talking to people, and I love sort of, just how can you be the difference, and how can you make the difference in people's lives, and so forth. So then moving on, left sort of dietetics and then did a little bit of lecturing at London Met for a while. Loved the students, loved learning, who they are and how can you speak into them and how can you help them to really find and connect with the knowledge so that they can become whole practitioners, because it's so easy to focus just on the knowledge and what you need and the skills and all of that kind of thing. But I think it's so important that we balance the person and who you are with the knowledge so that you come out as a more rounded and whole person. And so that was always something that was in the forefront of how I chose to interact with the students, etc., etc. And then PCN role, as you mentioned, I think, Alistair, you probably, you're doing fantastic things. So I could probably learn a couple of things from you as well. But certainly within that context, behavior change and empowering and preparing patients for behavior change is so powerful. So that's a really important skill that I think that I bring, and that is really, from the patient feedback you get, really, patients are transforming, they making the changes, they embracing that, and that's wonderful from a dietetic perspective, where you see what you've put in, how it comes out for you, but then for the person itself. And then, as you mentioned as well, Long, doing my professional doctorate, finished right at the end in a couple of weeks' time. Hopefully I'll be awarded my degree, and it's been really hard. The topic that I've chose is because of my history coming from apartheid South Africa and racism and all of that. So fighting for nutrition in sickle cell, fighting for something that nutrition in sickle isn't yet a part of standard care provision. So it's been a really tough journey, but You know, I spoke about standing on the shoulders of those who've gone ahead of us, being bold, being courageous, and stepping outside of comfort zone and shifting and pioneering and trailblazing. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. That's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
That's so inspiring, Claudine, and I think every part can be another episode really of your story in Cape Town and your stories, to say, in Hackney, and then your doctorate and your lecturing, just so wonderful. I am sure I need to ask for coffee really one day, and just to chat a bit more. And yes, so interesting. I think all of you guys have mentioned about why it's so important in dietetics, and sort of Black History Month, why it's relevant to dietetics. And obviously, Alice, you mentioned about having an education program that's tailored to the patient group that speak to this language. And we know that the evidence has also suggested if you work with people in that ethnic minority, regardless, it's better to have someone with the same ethnic minority that will have actually better clinical outcome, really. And I think on that note, I probably would ask you in terms of the challenges of being a Black dietitian or Black student, really, is so what challenges do you typically encounter in the dietetic profession, and how do you suggest that we address those obstacles? Anyone would like to make a start? Yeah.
Alistair, you can go if you want.
Yeah, sure. So I think in the beginning, I remember sort of being a student, and actually, if you think about the way the programs are, you're teaching a program, so you think about sort of the demographic and the main ethnicities that are represented on the course, and the main sort of clinical priorities. Because if you think about a dietetics course, everyone is essentially being prepped to essentially go into the acute dietetic workforce. That's the main prepping. And then there'll be, sort of other things that are organized. Well, obviously I was taught on the Hertfordshire program, so it may be very different on the Surrey program. So you guys may be a lot more advanced. But, on the course that I was on, some of the places you go on placement, you're really geared up to provide a lot of, let's just say Eurocentric sort of dietary advice and things like that. And you may not be as exposed to, sort of ethnic minority groups, Black minority groups, things like that. And due to that sort of lack of exposure, there's also a lack of awareness. So dietitians who do end up in those areas are basically using let's just say the cookie cutter method way of doing a dietetic assessment, and trying to address the nuances of dietetics with somebody who is not from that background. So I'm just imagining someone who is trained on a program who doesn't see a lot of Black people, whether that's Africans or Caribbeans or British born Black people, and then going into a community where such a thing exists, and then having to provide that dietetic advice. It can be a very, very, very difficult thing to sort of a difficult thing to break into. And I know sort of for me personally as well, it's like there are actually nuances in the way that we actually speak as a people. So when I'm actually addressing nutrition with people from where I'm from in West Africa and Ghana, I actually use a lot more of a directive approach. Directive approach, because actually people come into clinic and they actually want to be told what they want to be told what to do. Yeah. And actually, and if I was to follow on from that, it's not even just being told, it's being told about things that are important to them. Yeah. And there's a way to organize that conversation. There's a way to open up that conversation. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I'm speaking with patients who aren't Black, or maybe come from a Caucasian background, who may be white, actually taking sometimes a more non-directive approach which is what we're taught as dietetic students, can be, it is essentially what's sort of praised and sort of and sort of raised up. And even when you're on your placements and you're being marked by your placement educators, that's what they're sort of looking for. Yeah. Whereas, coming from a community, what what kind of works for that community.
Yeah.
So, so there were some challenges for some of our students, you know, who were on the program, who were trying to essentially use these approaches to speak to their communities, but there actually wasn't enough understanding about the nuances of the culture. So obviously, us being here now, we can influence that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's so interesting and so important as well. And just literally just gave me some ideas, you know, in terms of dietetic education, how we should tailor it really, or to make it more inclusive and more diverse, really. Exactly as you said, you know, we teach in a certain way that's probably is not appropriate for a certain culture. As a Chinese, I can so relate to that as well. But we will touch on the education later on as well. And anyone would like to, and Claudine or Esther would like to say something about this?
Yeah, I was gonna add, unless Claudine,
No,
you
go.
first.
No, you go,
Yeah?
Esther, you go.
I had actually had an example of that with my peers and I when we came back from placement. And obviously, because Surrey's in the south of England, some people were sent to hospitals and communities that are quite far in the south of England, and those tend to be populated with people from the global south, or like global east rather, who are like Asian, so Southeast Asians, and we weren't taught, you know, about that. As Alistair said, the curriculum is very much tailored to a Eurocentric diet, and they really struggled to help patients who did have things like diabetes or were living with obesity or overweight, and they weren't, you know, able to actually work through a diet history, which is one of the very fundamental things, you know. One of the very fundamental things of dietetics, for example, cultural differences. What we call stew, what I call stew as Nigerian, is very different from what a British person will call stew. So if you go into a clinic with a Nigerian person and they're saying I had rice and stew, and you're gonna, you know, it's just, you're gonna misunderstand what they're saying. You're not going to be able to do that that consultation properly. So actually, it's doing not only the students a disservice, but it's doing the people that are receiving the care a disservice as well, because, you know, based off of their ethnicity, you're now unable to give them adequate care. So, you know, we need to really look into that and how to diversify the way we teach about.
Yeah, of course, and obviously I have well, I say this after Claudine has said your points. Yeah, Claudine.
No, I guess it's, you know, what both Alistair and Esther were saying. I mean, my experience is slightly different in the sense that I guess, you know, I come from where I come from, but also the areas that I worked in the UK were very diverse and very, and what was nice is the trust where I worked, the workforce was very diverse as well. So I haven't, and certainly my encounters with the patients, you know, it's been easier for me, I guess, to relate to patients on various levels. So I've not had that direct first-hand experience. And I think as you guys were talking, I'm thinking about communication skills, and I'm thinking about the diet history, you know, how we do that thing. But the communication skills in the first instance is, how do you relate with that person? Because if you win the person over at the start, then they're more relaxed to tell you where they are at, and you can then guide, and you can take your time a little bit to understand a bit more before you go in with dietetics. Because I think sometimes we tend to go in with dietetics, then we haven't listened, and we haven't used our core skill of communication and that active listening skills to hear what the patient is saying. You know, the NHS is all about personalized care and patient-centered care. So I think there's an element of, yes, we have to be culturally aware, but I think we need to combine that with the dietetic practice, going back to our core skill of communication skills and, you know, the active listening, and putting giving the patient the opportunity to speak, building that relationship right at the beginning. So I think I've always, had that ability, I think, within where I've been. And so I've been able to navigate that reasonably okay, but also having heightened awareness of my own experience. So you're bringing your own experience of firsthand racism and all of that kind of thing. So you have that heightened awareness of, I need to be really sensitive. That means I need to listen. I need to hear what this person is saying, and then I need to make those changes. I need to adapt, and then I can bring dietetics in. Yeah. And that's been quite successful, you know, irrespective of where I've been. So I think it's the combination of all of those various things together that's going to result in an empowered patient, an empowered dietitian, and the outcome that we want to see from both the patient and a clinician perspective. So that's what I want to add to that.
Yeah. And have you encountered any challenges then in the dietetic profession, Claudine?
So my challenge has actually been a dietitian. So when I was first sort of working in the UK, was a dietitian who didn't want me to supervise her because she believed that she knew more than me. And that to me, you know, it really knocked my confidence because, yeah, you know, we are dietitians, we know different things. Alistair knows more about diabetes and advanced level than I know, but I know something more about something else. And I think that's also the problem with sometimes with dietetics. If you go too close and you don't allow yourself, you spoke about the nuances, Alistair, in the conversations that you've had. If we don't allow space for nuances, if we don't allow space for learning from others, whether you know a lot more than something about someone else, that person may well know something more or have a different perspective that opens up your perspective, which means the patient will have a wider perspective of what you bring to the table. So I think the biggest challenge for me, certainly in the UK, has been, you know, from a dietetic colleague who, as I said, just was like, no, I'm not, she's not going to supervise me. And I think we really need to respect one another. We really need to be aware of our strengths and our weaknesses and what we bring to the table and what we add, and to be a bit more open-minded, you know, because you never know that person that you think doesn't know what you know might, as I said, might have that key. I mean, Long, you said from when Alistair spoke, there's things that he's spoken that you're going to take away and, you know, reflect on and see what you can do differently. So you never know. And that's really increased the awareness for me as to, you know, who am I interacting with and what's my contribution, but also what's their contribution to me. How can what they know enhance what I know and broaden my perspective, etc., etc. So I think that's another thing, and I think, you know, that we need to be aware of. But that's been one of my biggest challenges within dietetics in the UK. In South Africa was another side of things, but, you know, we'll leave that for another conversation. But certainly within the UK, I think we need to be mindful, you know, even within and amongst ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's important to respect each other, regardless of, you know, ethnicity or background or whatever. I think being kind and being respectful and then you can always learn from everyone really, regardless of their banding or their, you know, experience. Even the most junior staff, you can learn from them. To say, people can learn from me about Chinese diet, for example, even I'm a newly qualified dietitian. And I think Esther mentioned about, you know, understanding the culture and understanding the culture diet and can help in terms of building the rapport with patients. I actually remembered I had a black patient when I was working in Anfield, and obviously has a quite diverse population, and she's an inpatient, and she mentioned a food. So I was doing the dietary assessment, and she mentioned the food and asked, "Oh, what's that?" And she said, "Do you not know it?" And I know that particular moment I've lost that patient. Regardless, whatever I'm telling her, she's not going to listen because she's already lost trust in me already at that point. So I think that just brings to the next question really is, how do you think we can then develop people or colleagues' culture competence or competency, and so that they can start to, you know, see patients from a black ethnicity? What do you think? What could be the strategy? What can we do?
I'm gonna jump in on this one. Then I'll get the others to follow. So I think one of the most important things, even from a student level, so student dietitians, like this one's actually for you. You know, if you come from an ethnic minority background, if you don't come from an ethnic minority background, you need to get on Instagram. You need to build awareness of the fact that, as Esther mentioned earlier, diets are such a diverse thing. And in fact, food brings the whole world together. And the more we know, and there's more interest we show in, like, you know, the vast array of diets that are out there, actually the better the conversations can be between people. I think it's one of the easiest ways to address barriers. Just simple. And it's not just awareness, because sometimes awareness can be patronizing too. It's acknowledgement and appreciation, you know. So I know what like, I'll give you two examples of like a sort of social media and sort of diets causing a little bit of controversy, but also, you know, praise. So when Jamie Oliver sort of decided that he was going to make a jollof rice, it was such an area of sort of controversy and intrigue, but it was also an area of appreciation, because he was highlighting how much, you know, he loved, you know, the vast blend of ingredients. He was bringing a wonderful staple cultural dish to the masses, so that other people could cook it and actually understand that, oh, so the African diet is actually a healthy diet to eat. Incredible, you know. And then in the same breath, Jamie Oliver did the same thing with sort of with rice and peas and jerk chicken, and he put his own swing on it. And actually, there was a lot more controversy on that side with the rice and peas and jerk chicken, only because he didn't actually understand the meaning of jerk. He didn't understand like the culture behind it, like how it was actually created and formed. He was thinking that jerk is just a spice, but it's more than that. It's a way of cooking, and there's actually a deep-rooted history actually that goes all the way back to slavery, when it was first created. That, you know, that underpins jerk chicken's significance in culture. He wasn't able to mention that, you know. Yeah. But the reason I bring these two things up is because that's where, you know, clinicians like us, you know, who are not just, you know, sort of nutritionally aware, but also, you know, we are well versed in health conditions as well. We're able to actually you know, overhaul all of that information and actually sift through it, so people actually get the best of the information, and they give awareness without all the without controversy. Let's just say, because
I think that's so important. You mentioned a very important bit is, you know, when there's threat, there's opportunity. And you know, like if you work in a place that people don't have that cultural competency, and you can actually go and develop, to say, I don't know, a session to actually educate the colleagues and to have develop that competency really. And as you said, to utilize social media, utilize all the platforms you've got. That can certainly help. That's so good. And I'm just reading the comments as well. I've got Susan, who said, absolutely, food is such an amazing way to break down barriers, and we need to ensure that we have a wide range of social media platforms to reach others. And I think, that's such a good point. And any Claudine or Esther, do you have anything to add?
Esther, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll go.
This is your
first. Thank you.
Yeah. You go.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention. I think also, I think public health in terms of, you know, being on social media, and that digital health is really good. So like public focusing information is really good. But I think in terms of targeting clinicians, in 2020, I think I saw an Afro-Caribbean Eat Well guide, and that was the first time I'd seen one of those for us. And then after that, I saw a Southeast Asian Eat Well guide as well. So that type of clinician-focused information also needs to be, you know, developed and curated and brought forward and disseminated to clinicians, just so that they can also build up that cultural competence. Because I think having conversations is really good, but unless it's actually taught and trained, and unless people are you know, given the tools to develop those skills, we're just going to keep talking.
And I think the, you know, promotions like this and raising awareness and resources like this is quite important. And I think the Black History Month, for example, is just an excellent way to enable that conversation, really. And I think that's why we actually need this kind of stuff to actually, you know, to basically initiate that conversation. And I've got actually a very interesting question here. And sorry, Claudine, if you want to,
No,
if
no,
you
no,
want to
no,
say
you go
anything, let
ahead.
me kind of. So the question is, during the times you've encountered diets you are unfamiliar with. So say if I'm Chinese, I'm seeing a black patient, for example, and I don't know that particular diet, and the patient is mentioning, what did you do to navigate that in that most professional and sensitive way possible?
Yes.
I think we shouldn't be afraid to say that we don't know as well.
Yeah.
Because when we step in and we get it wrong, like you've mentioned, the jerk chicken and all, that kind of thing, then we can get it very wrong. So I think, I've had occasions where I didn't know, and I had to be, really honest and say that, you've mentioned this, and, to be truthful, I've not encountered that, but I am going away to do my homework, or could you direct me as to, where I could find more information, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's really important that as practitioners that, we can't think we should know it all, but sometimes we don't know it all, and it's okay to not know it all. And just put your hand up. And I think that's one of the first things that we can do, because it's an empowered person that can do that. Somebody that, if you're not secure, then you can do things that sometimes you'll regret. But that would be one of the things that I would say to do, and certainly what I've done when I didn't know, because what I wanted to say, to the point you had before, was, and this whole thing of culture and diversity and inclusivity, is we are all people. We need to get back to the basics of loving people, of acknowledging people for being people, irrespective of where, color, race, creed, whatever. And I know it's a big thing, but it can be a simple thing. If we each decide that the person I'm encountering is a person, firstly, and then they have everything else that makes them that person. And certainly within, like, my doctoral degree and certain diet, nutrition in sickle cell, I've had to go in, and I've had to take a wider perspective and whole person, who's this whole person with a whole lived experience. I don't have sickle cell disease. And so, rightly people can say, so who are you to come and do this thing? But I know people. And so I've gone in there with, who's this person, and understood this person as a whole person with a whole lived experience. And that's how I've learned to build trust, and where I could interact, and people, could reciprocate that. So I think I just wanted to add that as well. I don't know if anybody else has something to say.
I definitely agree. Yeah, definitely agree. I think getting people to talk about themselves always makes them feel a lot more open. And I think it's like a well-known thing that the person who talks the most in a conversation walks away feeling the best about themselves, and just asking them to explain shows them that you want to understand and that you're invested. So it's definitely a great technique.
And I think being honest, obviously, is the best way. Just acknowledge you don't know, and I think that can be a way to develop a rapport with the patient, asking them to actually teach you about their culture. And some people are very happy to do that, and I think that can be, don't that impatient. She's quite unwell. Probably she didn't have that energy to educate you at that time. But I think that can be really a good way for them to explain to you of as exactly as you said, Claudine. It's as long as you go with a whole heart, and treat as a person rather than just a patient or object. And then you will eventually win that someone over, even you don't know about that particular diet. And obviously, you will go home and learn more about a particular one. It's about learning, isn't it? Always. Anything you'd like to add, like Alistair or Esther?
One thing I do. So I was speaking to some of my other dietetic colleagues about this. Is especially when I was in London, I would take the bus or the train back. I use it as an opportunity to be that crazy guy on the train who would have a conversation with somebody. And every time I had these conversations, it was all in an effort to just understand a little bit more about the different cultures that are out there. Like, so when you go home, like, what are you actually eating? Like, what is that? Like, how is it prepared? How is it cooked? Because every single one of those conversations I was able to take with me into the clinic room. And even if I didn't understand fully, as Claudine was saying, I would say, I don't know. or I'd have Google open, so I could see, okay, so what is the actual nutritional breakdown of this food that they're eating?
Yeah.
Oh, so you have this and you fry it. Cool.
That's the main thing. You fry it.
and then you would just ask, okay, well, is it possible to actually make this food without deep frying it? Could you shallow fry it? Or could you use a different kind of oil? Could you make sure you don't reuse the oil? Because then you're using, as Claudine said, your basic dietetic knowledge, you're mixing it up with that sort of person-centered intervention, and you're actually able to make a huge difference in maybe one thing, and that one thing could be the linchpin that actually is that patient making progress or failing completely. So so that would be my 2 cents. We're always learning. Well, we're clinicians, aren't we? So
and I think it's that to intending to learn as well, not just for the clinics, but in daily life, really. And that's why we need to be curious about other cultures, I guess, and not just living your own culture or living just in a bubble, and but then active to learn. I think that's very important, and I think that actually will improve and enhance someone just overall, I believe. I remember we had a session where I had to teach ethnic diets, and so the first session I did was I was just covering all the ethnic diets, and I was standing in front of the class. And because obviously I knew some knowledge about different ethnic diets, but obviously I hadn't really lived in that culture. And I found it extremely difficult to explain stuff to the students that's not from my culture, if that makes sense. And it's almost from my reason and from my experience, but actually I just didn't feel like it's that authentic really during that session. And then so I didn't feel good, because after the teaching session you have a feeling of how it went. I think although students felt probably it was okay, but I didn't feel that's okay. So the following year I changed the format, where I changed to a panel discussion where I invited dietitians and nutritionists from that particular ethnic background, and we have a chat like this basically. And I felt so much better after that, because I felt it's more authentic, and I think it's more convincing as well for students, and so I think we'll carry on in that way. And I think that's in terms of education, because that's my question of what can we do in terms of, from a dietetic education point of view in higher education, and obviously bring more people from those ethnic backgrounds to teach students in a more authentic way. And then Alistair just mentioned about the communication skills as well. There's no one communication skill style, and for different culture that can be different. There are different ways, and we need to really cover that. And that's my takeaway from today's session. Is there anything else from you, like Esther, who's just recently graduated, or Claudine, who's been in this profession for such a long time, Alistair, anything else do you think the dietetic education should really provide or change?
I think adding to what you've said with your revised approach of teaching diets, bringing in people, and I guess maybe just doing like some sort of survey to get people's opinions and ideas of what they think this thing needs to look like. Because I'm very aware that if we always do what we've always done, we will always have what we've always had. And from this conversation, we want something different. And if we want to do something different, or we want a different outcome, we have to do something differently. So I think we need to look at what are we doing and what have we always been doing, and what do we need to do differently to get the right kind of buy-in, to get the right kind of, understanding and information that we can then use to inform how we do what we do. But certainly, I think what you've learned is bringing in people who know, people who can speak authentically about whatever it is that, the topic, etc., etc. I think that's really, really important. But it starts with, like, if we stay in the, in our comfort zones of doing it the way that we feel comfortable and that we know how to do it, we're going to get that same result. And it's going to defeat the purpose. And like what Esther said, if we don't do things differently, we're going to keep getting the same thing. I mean, and things are not going to change. And next year's Black History Month, we're going to have a similar conversation. And I would hope that from our conversation today, that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the people listening today, or the people that will listen, will take away 1 or 2 actions and actually go away and implement that, so that when we have a conversation next year, they can listen again, but they have, you know, something new that they've added to who they are and how they do things. I just saw there was a comment earlier on about, you know, how do you ask people about different diets and stuff, and the person not feeling comfortable doing that. And I just wanted to say to that is, this is a person, you know, that you're dealing with, and it's about building the rapport with that person. Because once you've built the rapport with the person, you've got the person on side and they trust you, that it's about them and not about you, then you have more liberty as a practitioner to go in there and to ask and maybe inquire things that you are a bit uncomfortable with. So that's, I want to say that too. I can't remember who it was, names, Faith or somebody. But, you know, it's that first initial sort of like, you know, who's this person, you know, building, connecting with them at that level, that gives you that opportunity to then to be curious, in a respectful way, and that they trust you, and that they know this is all about personalized care and patient-centered care, and not about the diet, the dietitian's agenda, but about their agenda. So I just wanted to answer that. One of those.
So thank you so much, Claudine. Last 1 or 2 minutes really of this chat is quickly, just within 30 seconds, for example, and how could you motivate more individuals from the Black backgrounds to study dietetics? And also, what further advancement or changes do you believe are necessary in the field of dietetics? So,
I'll tell you what. What inspired me. It was sort of, there were some historical sort of Black dietitians, like Douglas 24, for example, you know, who are, they're having success in their areas of practice or areas of sort of expertise, and they're highlighting it. So people know what they're doing. You know, as dietitians, we are very, very head down. Let's get our work done, get our check, and get out of there. It's very, very important to actually highlight the amazing things that you are doing, no matter how small you think it is, because people are watching. So, you know, which is why I've been using my platform, well, seldomly, but I'm going to use it more to highlight the fact that, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing in primary care. It's really working over here. This is my background. And it could definitely be you. So it's just letting people know what is achievable by being out there and highlighting your actual achievements.
Utilize the social media really, and it's very, very powerful. What about you, Esther?
Yes, before I go, actually, I just wanted to highlight that there is research going on at the University of Surrey into the different doses of vitamin D. Vitamin D is very important at this time of year, and they're looking for people from global majority backgrounds, so Southeast Asians and Black people join. I'm going to DM me if you want to be a part of that. That's something that we were meant to announce long, but I just wanted to go in there and announce it. I think to your question, what motivated me to study dietetics was actually the fact that I didn't see the representation of Black people in dietetics. I wanted to be a Black person in dietetics that others could look to and see that it is possible to, you know, become a dietitian as, you know, a young Black woman, or, you know, just as a Black person. And I think, again, to my point is that diets are one of the most diverse things, so we need a diverse workforce to be able to actually make an impact in people's lives, and to be able to give personalized care. We do need to have that cultural competence, and there's nothing more culturally competent than being from the culture itself. So yeah, that's my little addition.
That's so important really, is I think just highlighted of why we need diverse workforce, basically. Why dietetics should really have people not just from Black backgrounds, but all ethnicities really, because we're caring for people from you know, those backgrounds. So that's very important. And any final words from you, Claudine?
I think think those two have said it really well. I'm going to end off with this is what I shared before when I did another Black History Month kind of event, and this is the 3 Ps. To inspire and encourage others to join. So the first P is your passion. We've heard from Alistair, we've heard from Esther about the passion and what drew them to this thing, the thing that causes them, enthusiasm and joy. So we want to encourage those to tap in and see, what's the passion? Is it food? Is it being that difference? Is it being a voice for your community? And then purpose. What is the thing what's the reason behind that passion? So, look inside and pull out that purpose. And then the third P is persistent determination. Don't fall at the first hurdle, use that hurdle as a propeller to move you forward. And, it's so wonderful to hear the stories of people saying they've looked in and it didn't look like me, but I did it anyway. And so I want to encourage the people listening, the students to come, do it anyway, because you can be that difference. You can be that difference and make that difference, in your unique way. So the 3 Ps.
Absolutely. Passion, purpose, and persistence. Really.
Yes.
And so important. Thank you so much, Claudine. And thank you so much, everybody, for your comments as well. And I can see Susan Price, she's actually in this chat and has put so many very useful comments, and obviously in her role soon as the BDA chair design. And we will certainly see more the development of more resources, hopefully. And then I know the BDA strategy for the next 10 years is to have a more diverse workforce as well. So I think that's always great news. And thank you everybody for joining today's chat. And obviously this will be available later, our Instagram platform at Surrey Dietetics, but also it will be available on YouTube for you to catch up. And thank you so much, 3 of you, for joining us tonight. What a wonderful chat. And I wish we could have like 2 hours to chat, because everybody, I have to tell you, I prepared probably 13 questions, and we only probably have gone through like 5 questions.
Yeah.
But I think it's certainly like the conversation doesn't end just by the end of 31st of October. I think these conversations need to continue to November, December, all year round, really, not just for Black History Month. It should really be discussed very regularly, very often. And I thank you so much. After today, I think we hopefully, how people can find you before I say anything on social media, since you've said, Alistair, we need utilize our social media. So how can people find you on social media then?
So you can find me on Instagram, obviously. You can send me a message on LinkedIn. I am very, very happy for people to message me on LinkedIn, and if they want to learn more about how I'm practicing, just pop me a message, and we can do a Teams chat, and you can learn more about how I do what I do in primary care, things like that.
Excellent. And Esther?
Yeah, so this is my Instagram account, and I'm also on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Esther Longe. So that's Long with an E at the end. And I respond to LinkedIn messages also.
Yeah, and Claudine?
I think I'm more active on LinkedIn, but I'm going to be bold and brave and do a little bit more on Instagram. This is my first live. So I'm hoping to take up that mantle and do a little bit more. Instagram and LinkedIn, definitely.
Excellent. Search Claudine Matthews. And you've stepped out your comfort zones, haven't you? Being on Instagram, being a role model, absolutely. And follow us at Surrey Dietetics, and watch our next chat. The information will be available soon. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this chat tonight, Alistair and Esther and Claudine. And thank you, and have a good evening, everybody. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for having us.